This is 106.7, Wilmington's Big Talker, and my name is Paul Vallone. I'd like to welcome you to Guns, Politics, and Freedom, where each Sunday at 5 p.m., as part of the Sunday Night Political Power Block, we give you the ammunition to better defend your gun rights. In case you aren't familiar with me, I direct Grassroots North Carolina since 1994, our state's most effective gun rights organization. As its director, I was involved in drafting and passing our original concealed handgun law. Since then, GRNC has gone on to engineer passage of concealed handgun reciprocity, our purchase permit bypass, castle doctrine and stand your ground, the expansion of concealed carry into state and municipal parks, restaurants, public assemblies, educational properties, and much more. Grassroots North Carolina is exactly what the name implies, a grassroots collection of people from all walks of life who share a common concern that our constitutionally guaranteed freedoms are being eroded. Check us out at grnc.org. That's grnc.org. Today, we have the good fortune to have as our guests North Carolina concealed handgun instructors who are out there in the trenches providing training needed for concealed handgun permits. They are Josette Shamil and Mark Erickson. Welcome, folks.
Hello, Paul. How are you doing?
Very good, sir.
Good.
Now, our question for debate today is, should firearm training be mandatory for all lawful citizens to carry concealed firearms with or without concealed handgun permits for protection of themselves and others? The reason we raise the question is that there have been some disagreement in the gun rights community over House Bill 746, which, among other things, would establish permitless concealed carry, sometimes called constitutional carry, in North Carolina. Although the bill is still alive for consideration in upcoming special sessions of the legislature and in the 2018 session, the Senate adjourned in 2017 without bringing the bill to a vote. One reason the bill didn't get a vote was that even pro-gun conservatives are split on some measures within the bill, in particular the permitless concealed carry that would enable people to carry concealed without taking the training course that is currently required for a concealed handgun permit. Two things need to be understood about the bill. First, if you are currently prohibited from getting a concealed handgun permit due to previous convictions or other problems, you would also be prohibited from carrying concealed without a permit. Second, people would only be able to carry concealed without a permit in places where they can already carry openly. Translated, only those people legal to carry firearms now would be able to do so under House Bill 746, and they would not be able to carry in sensitive areas like restaurants, educational properties, and public assemblies unless they got a concealed handgun permit, including the training course. Now, before we start our debate, we need to set the record straight on a couple of things. First, nobody here is arguing against people getting defensive gun training. The fact is that your chances of surviving a deadly encounter increase in direct proportion to the level of your training. The question at hand is not whether you should get training, but instead whether the government should be able to mandate training for you to carry a concealed firearm. Second, nobody on this show today is anti-gun. I know both of these people, fine people, very well, and they have been devoting lots of time, sweat, and money to defending your right to bear arms for many years. So whether you agree with the perspective they are arguing or not, give them the respect they deserve, because these are people fighting for your rights. So if I get any nasty emails impugning their motives, I am not going to be a happy camper. Thanks in large part to the American political left, civil debate over public policy has largely gone the way of the dodo. But here today, I can assure you it still pertains. Each participant will get 2 minutes to introduce themselves and their perspective, after which they will get 2 minutes to answer a question, and his or opponent will get 1 minute for rebuttal. The only exceptions will be if we have to break for commercials. Before the show, we tossed a coin to see who gets the first question, after which we will alternate. The winner of that coin toss is Mark. Now, in terms of before we get to the questions, let's make the introductions. Josette, you've been a firearms instructor for a couple of years now. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? And before that, of course, you were GRNC's Director of Development, actively working for gun rights. You correctly mentioned early on that even some gun rights advocates would have problems with a permitless concealed carry bill, which did not require training for those carrying concealed. So tell us what made you think that would be the case and how you arrived at your conclusions.
Let me start off, Paul, by saying that that I am a strict constitutionalist, and I have, as you know, and the people who are close to me know, I'm an very adamant about my Second Amendment rights. Since I've become a firearms instructor, and I'm looking at about 5 or 6 years at this point, I started to see things from a perspective that I didn't have prior to just being an advocate and a fighter for our Second Amendment. So with that being said, I'm a chief range safety officer. I teach everything from the chapter leader of the Well-Armed Women at the Briar Creek in Raleigh, North Carolina. I teach basic handgun 1, basic handgun 2, personal protection in and outside the home, as well as concealed carry. So back to your question. Mm-hmm. Yeah, your question again. Could you repeat that?
Basically, what made you come to the conclusion that training should be mandated, and how did you arrive at those conclusions?
Wow. So, can you tell them I'll take a message? Thanks. I think that's a presumption. I'm going to start off by saying that there's a little bit of a presumption in your question there. I'm really torn on the mandated training, to be very honest with you. Okay. I was, prior to becoming an instructor, I was all about, hey, bleeding red, white, and blue, wearing my, out of my dead hands T-shirt, Gadsden flag wearing person, and government stay out of my life, including out of my holster. And since I've become an instructor, I've started to see things from the perspective of, while there are a large number of people who take their training and their education seriously, there is a segment of the folks who don't. I see people come through concealed carry classes having never handled a firearm. The concealed carry training currently, as it stands with the state, is kind of mainly a law class. There's some basics that they go into, but it's not a skills building class. It is not a self-defense training class. And so I see these people that get these permits, and then they walk around going, I have my concealed carry. I have my concealed carry. And if they were in a self-defense situation, there's a good chance, in my opinion, they'd end up dead or injured because they don't know what they're doing. So I do think that there needs to be training. My conflict, and I think I speak for a large population out there who is struggling with House Bill 746, and that is that we don't like the government telling us what to do. Right? And who is the government? The government is typically a bunch of people who don't know what they're talking about, trying to set regulations for people who do know what they're talking about. So with that being said, that becomes a huge rabbit hole, right? The government always is a huge rabbit hole. We can agree on that.
Yeah, I think we agree on that, all of us.
Exactly.
Okay.
But the thing is how do we make that work? How do we make it work where people are getting the training that they need not to hurt themselves or others around them, and I think we're going to talk about solutions later.
Okay, we will.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what, right now, Mark, go ahead and start your introduction. I'll give you a minute, and then after that, we're going to, we'll probably continue on the second segment. Go ahead, sir.
Great. Well, I've been involved in firearms since I was in high school. I actually learned how to shoot in a DCM program in high school. And in 1973, I bought my first handgun. And for several years, I had that firearm without any training whatsoever. In fact, I think the majority of people that have firearms in their home never get training. It took me a few years to wake up and say, what would I do if I really encountered a situation? And that's the point at which I started to get training from people like Massad Ayoob, his Lethal Force Institute, and eventually through the NRA programs. I'm a multi-certified NRA instructor like Josette is. I teach all the classes that they offer, including reloading and the tactical classes that they do. And I'm also an instructor with the Department of Justice program for concealed carry here. So I've been teaching for about 9 years, part of a volunteer team that is a large team up at a club near Raleigh, North Carolina. We have about 11 members, and we are pretty active with that.
All righty. I'll tell you what, sir, I'm going to ask you to continue that after the break. Right now, we are going to take a break in just a moment. You are listening to Wilmington's Big Talker 106.7, wilmingtonbigtalker.com, and I am Paul Vallone, your host for Guns, Politics, and Freedom. In a moment, we'll return with Josette Shamil and Mark Erickson, and our question today, should training be mandated for people who carry concealed firearms for self-protection? Join us after the break for the next segment of Guns, Politics, and Freedom. My name is Paul Vallone, and you are listening to Guns, Politics, and Freedom today on Wilmington's Big Talker, 106.7, wilmingtonbigtalker.com. Our guests today are Josette Shamil and Mark Erickson, and our question is, should training be mandated for people who carry concealed firearms for self-protection? I'm sorry, Mark, we were in the middle of your introduction when we got interrupted. Go right ahead, sir.
So with about 10 volunteer instructors on the teaching team that we have, we've seen a lot of students come through. We, because we're volunteers, keep our classes very, very small. And with a student load of about 6 students, we've gotten a lot of people that come in who already have their permits that actually want the education. So I think there's some holes in the current way that we do the teaching and proficiency. And that's the main reason I've come to chat with you. My biggest concern is that this issue seems to be dividing the pro-gun community, and constitutional carry is a very important issue.
Very good. Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. All righty then. Our questions, as we get to them today, are essentially the camp's breakdown into those who are concerned that lack of training may cause us problems versus those who argue that self-defense is a fundamental civil liberty and should be relatively free of restrictions. Now, let's deal with the practical aspects of permitless concealed carry first, and then move on to the constitutional aspects. Mark, the first question goes to you, 2 minutes with a rebuttal by 1 minute from Josette, and actually there are 2 parts to this question. Now, constitutional carry advocates often point to open carry, which is legal in this state, as an example of carry without training, which they say causes few or no problems. Are you aware of any problems that open carry has caused in North Carolina, and do you feel that it's valid to use open carry as a proxy to predict problems or the absence of problems for permitless concealed carry?
Actually, I'm not aware of problems open carry is causing, except perhaps the anxiety that people have if they're anti-gun or scared by guns and they see somebody carrying. Constitutional carry would help solve that issue partially. The biggest issue that you've got to understand is that there has to be a compelling reason to have the state actually certify competence. And I'm not sure that there is one. If you look at the studies that have been done of states that already have concealed carry, that's constitutional carry, before and after constitutional carry passing, there's no difference in the accident rate. For 5 years, they've monitored 3 states and seen no difference in them.
Really? Which 3 states are those?
Just a sec. That's some of John Lott's work.
No kidding. I was not aware of that.
And
actually.
he's looking at the states of Montana, Alaska, and Arizona.
Okay.
All of which have had constitutional carry for more than 5 years. They're 3 of the 14 states that actually already have it in place. The other thing that we've seen is that the issue itself doesn't rear itself as badly because the need for training seems to rise after constitutional carry. Instructors in areas that have just gotten it have indicated that they've got more demand for classes. Mm-hmm. The net of this is that the goal of constitutional carry is to remove the bureaucratic impediments to protecting yourself. That's the bottom line. There is, I think, under law, and the judges are allowing infringements like this, there is a compelling reason for public protection when people carry a gun. The issue is, should that extend to the state itself, creating the certification process and the qualification process?
Okay, very good. Josette, your rebuttal, if you would, please. And again, the question here is, Do you feel that open carry has it caused any problems in North Carolina that you're aware of? And do you feel that the absence or presence of problems with open carry would serve as an indicator of whether or not we'll have problems with permitless carry, concealed carry, that is? So
I'm in 100% agreement with Mark that there, I haven't heard of anything other than, depending on what city you're in, like the wonderful city of Durham that I live in, if you were to open carry.
People's Republic of Durham, it's not a city.
Right, communist Durham. That, there would be probably a fear-based reaction from a lot of people. But outside of that, no, I agree with Mark on that. Can it be used as a proxy of problems that we might see with concealed carry? No, I mean, I think it's similar but different. How's that for an answer?